Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are at. I hope you're having a fantastic day. It's SoulSaint here, and we got some news about the upcoming events that are coming around. This hypothetical new Alice in Wonderland, excuse me, Elise. I wanted to give you guys a quick heads up. We do have some information regarding 3 different things that are going to be coming up today that I'm going to share with you. So let's get right into it. The first one's going to be event dungeons. We got the Relic. You know, we already heard about Pinpoint coming out. And along with it, they're going to be doing some additional things like an event dungeon-based relic. So it says as a part of the campaign, 2 exclusively themed relics, epic and legendary rarity, will be introduced to the game. Both relics will belong to the relic group. During the campaign, players will be able to obtain unique craft materials for these relics in some of the tournaments and events. All players can take part in the first event dungeon tournament to get an epic relic from milestones. So the stored relic that we're seeing over here is going to be a HP attack crit damage based relic. So it's going to be more of an offensive type relic. And it says the wearer receives 5% less damage from enemies whose attack is lower than the wearer. And then it also inflicts 5% more damage to enemies whose max HP is lower than the wearer's. So I feel like this type of relic is going to be really useful for like HP-based nukers, as you can obviously see. Maybe even some hybrid HP attack nukers, like for example, maybe Rotos if you're looking for PvP. He scales very well off of all the stats that are available. His attack is also pretty significant, as well as being able to build into his HP side, which also could be useful against certain matchups. Now, at the same time, too, you're also going to get some big damage modifiers. So we're going to get an additional 6%, I believe it is, if I'm looking at this correctly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more percent, excuse me. In addition to that, once you level it up all the way. It also comes with a triangular and a square gemstone socket. So depending on the available gemstones you have, that you can use, there might be some really good combinations you can kind of use that way. So not bad. I'm actually curious to see if there's going to be an enhanced version of this, if it's the exact same type in terms of like the actual relic passive, or I guess you say active, depending on how you want to look at it. Or if it's going to have different substats that you're going to be able to utilize to enhance your character's builds even more. I'd be very curious to see how that legendary version of it is. But nevertheless, I think this is a very, very cool addition to the game, especially since Relics is so fairly new. And I really think that if we get more and more relics in the game that have more diverse passes or actives that you can utilize in fights, I think that's going to add a lot of build diversity into the team. So I think that's going to be pretty cool. All right, let's go to number 2. We got information about the event dungeon boss. We're going to have some skills that we can look at here that's going to be pretty interesting. And I'll just go ahead and say a disclaimer here about this, is that if they have something comparable to how they did the Odin event for the event dungeon, basically Odin's kit was translatable over to his actual kit. You know, the dungeon version of the kit is translatable over to his actual design that we as players can use, for example, right? So I wonder if this is going to be one of the new champions that are going to be coming out in the near future that we've been talking about. And I think that's going to be pretty interesting to kind of see. So let's dive right into it. This boss is going to have its A1, attacks all enemies, places a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns, and he also fills the turn meter of all allies by 5%. Skill number 2, removes all buffs from all enemies, so it's a buff removal. Then places a Death Brand debuff on the initial target for 2 turns. Also places a True Fear debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. Fills this champion's turn meter 5% for each buff removed by the skill. So if you're looking at a minimum, if you only have like 1 buff on each enemy, which you have like maybe 4, and like maybe perhaps PvP for this champion, if it is going to be one that's going to be usable by us, then you're getting at least 5 by 4. That's 20% turn meter boost. That's not bad. It's not bad. On the higher end scale of things, if you have like 10 buffs on the enemy per enemy, that can get pretty nuts pretty quickly. You know what I mean? That's almost like a guaranteed turn. Now, I think realistically speaking, having maybe 4 buffs or 3 buffs would probably be more like a realistic expectation. So you're looking at like 15% turn meter per enemy that gets their buff stripped. But nevertheless, that's still solid too. By the time you finish it, you're already with 60% turn meter. You're practically already on your way to your next turn. So very, very unique skill. And I think that's going to be dangerous depending on how you look at it. So as of right now, the True Fear being a little icing on the cake, it is polyable, but I think that's still something that can be kind of circumvented, especially since we're getting Pinpoint again, you know? Skill number 3, teams up with all allies to attack a singular enemy. We have an ally attacker. Before attacking, places a 50% increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. Decreases the cooldown of this champion skill to the second ability by 2 turns if the target is killed. So you could open up A2 to kind of like set the tone to strip somebody, and then if you want to do like a follow-up hit to kind of give yourself the opportunity to to kill somebody after the fact, you could do that, and which will allow you to re-enable that skill 2 depending on the cooldown, and you're basically able to recycle, stripping them again if they were trying to recover, you know? Really, really strong. Really, really strong. All right, the passive of this this champion, this boss, is going to grant this champion an extra turn every 10 buffs placed on the enemy team. If there are multiple champions on the team with this skill, only one will activate. That is different. I think they're playing off of the similar structure that like Odin had, where every 9 turns something would trigger in terms of his passive, which would be block damage. I think he also does a buff spread too, if I remember correctly. That is nuts. I think that is a very, very interesting thing. Let's take a look in game. I want to take a look at Odin a little bit more, and we can kind of get better of an example. But while that's loading up, let's take a look at what Death Brand means, because that's another debuff that's being placed on the target. On the initial target too, so it's important who you're targeting at the beginning of the A2. Champions under a Death Brand debuff will receive a block revive debuff when killed. So it's like a setup. Okay, all right, I'm gonna take your buffs away. I'm gonna put Death Brand on you. Maybe perhaps it's like on a Mariska that has like revive, you know, as a passive. Killing them while they have that Death Brand up means that she's no longer able to be revived, and that's like kind of almost like mitigating that passive in a sense, you know, which is really, really cool. Or, for example, Torment, who likes to pop back up, or Sun Wukong, who likes to pop back up. By having that debuff already initially set up, anybody that doesn't normally have that block revive would go in, kill the champion, and that debuff would lock that champion down at that point. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. I feel like that's going to be a very interesting dynamic for PvP, if we're being honest with you. I wanted to take a look at passives here. Yeah, so it's every 9 turns, and it does block damage and a buff spread effect, taking all buffs from this champion and place them all allies. So this is something that can be kind of like a response to Odin's passive in a sense, where like every 10 buffs that are placed on an enemy would allow him to do it. So like, you know, basically these triggers could trigger upon themselves, and that could be kind of interesting. And I'm just using that as one example of many different ways that you can get that trigger to occur. So just keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. Anyways, with that being said, we got one more thing. Speaking of champions that we're going to be getting in the near future, possibly, potentially, we'll have to see. One of the 5 themed legendary champions will be attainable via a mixed fusion event that will launch on January 8th. So it's coming up sooner rather than later, believe it or not. This is the 3rd as of the time of this recording. It's going to be a Knights Revenant champion that's a legendary. It's supposed to be a support type with the affinity being Force, which is going to be great. I feel like there's, for me at least, in terms of supports, I don't have like a lot of Force champions that I would want to use, I guess you could say. Anyways, with that being said, it's going to be a versatile PvE support champion specializing in spreading debuffs, empowering allies with healing, buff extension, and turn meter boost. Their toolkit is designed to keep allies alive in the fight while disrupting the enemy strategy. So I feel like this is going to be very interesting. I wonder if there's a correlation between the boss and this particular champion that we're going to be getting in this fusion event. Obviously, there's going to be some more caveats that we're going to see, like how that disruption going to be played into the character's kit, as well as you know what type of turn meter are we looking at. There's a lot of questions that still need to be answered before we can kind of give you a true definition of what the potential this champion is going to have. However, you know, just reading it off the cup here, it seems to be very interesting. There's a lot in this kit already that we're looking at. You know, spreading debuffs, healing, buff extension, turn meter boosting. That's a lot of support, as you can obviously see from this champion's type. It's going to be a support, so like it's going to be really interesting. I'm looking forward to it. Anyways, that's all the information I have to share with you guys here. I'm really excited to have it going. To get into a new event. I'm really excited for Pinpoint. I hope you guys have saved your resources up for this one. This is going to be a pretty good one to farm. But let me know. Are you guys going to be going active in this particular fusion event? I feel like it's a little too soon to say. How do you guys feel about the new Relic that's going to be coming into play? As well as, the boss that we're going to be going against to maybe potentially attain those resources. Do y'all feel like it's going to be a challenge, or do y'all feel like this is not too bad? This is going to be within a reasonable expectation range. I feel like I'm going to do pretty well. I have when in doubt, nut out. I got my G nuts ready to go. I'm actually curious to see how this Death Brand is going to play into the current environment of PvP. I think that's going to be really, really interesting. Anyways, with that being said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and as always remember, stay ascended. Got the